Hey, hi everyone. Good morning, good evening. Hope I'm audible. Just let me know in the chat. Okay, great. Welcome everyone for our today's session for to know about the cloud. Get to know about what is cloud computing and what kind of technologies or the steps that you should take for switching your role to a cloud platform. So basically, that's what we're gonna have some kind of discussion over here. So probably let me just start with a quick recap, like quick introduction about myself, what do I do and who I am, and then I'll walk you through some slides, and then we'll have some kind of Q and A's as well at the end of this session. So myself, Bharat, you can call me Bharat. Let me just rename. And in case of any questions after the session, right, you can just raise your hand or you can put it in the chat box as well, and Sneha would be able to assist you with your queries. Yeah. So coming back to myself, Bharat, I have close to 10 plus experience working in IT. And I've majorly worked as an backend developer and DevOps and SR engineer in my past. And, I worked on multiple clouds, multi-clouds development, hybrid clouds development in my past experience. I worked on AWS, Azure, OCI, and GCP in my throughout my career, developing distributed applications throughout the platform deployments and also doing the CI/CD process on the cloud. So this would be my kind of um, kind of task and the jobs I have done in my past. And I've been with upGrad, handling the sessions on helping the people to move towards cloud and learning the DevOps process, automations, right? So, and I also from a development point of view, what kind of use cases we can handle with cloud. So that's what I'm pretty much what handling with upgrad right now, right? So this today's agenda, the majorly it's gonna be what is cloud and how do we switch from cloud, and anyone who has zero knowledge or who have already worked on on-prem. So what kind of knowledge that what kind of steps or measures that we should take to switch to a cloud platform. So that's basically what we would be learning, or we would be going through this call, right? And then we'll have some Q and A's post that. Just give me a second.
Bharat, I'm so sorry to interrupt. Just a
Mhm.
minute. This is for everyone, which I missed telling before. So, everyone who has been attending this workshop, we have an exclusive and exciting offer for the attendants who will be staying till the end. So, stay tuned till the end to avail this offer. Plus, we'll also be giving on the certification for all the attendees who will be completing this webinar. So, you'll be also getting a certification. Thank you so much, Bharat. Over to you. Bharat, you're on mute.
Sorry. Yeah, just give me 1 second. I'm pulling up the file. Yeah, let me do my screen share. Yeah. So, let's not make this as an session or kind of place where you enroll for something or not. Like what we'll do is we'll kind of try to have it as an interactive session, try to learn what you know about cloud already, and I'll also share what exactly it is, and I'll share some kind of thoughts from my side as well. Right. So probably let me start with the first question. What do you understand by cloud, or what is cloud computing? Not sure if it was already asked from Sneha's side, but let me start from my side as well first. So, what do you get by the term cloud computing? Anyone? You can put it on a chat in a short form. What do we do with cloud, and what exactly is the cloud computing? sharing resource, physical less computing, all computing takes place, provider, computation on data rather than on premises. Yeah, so pretty much what does it mean, right? Like, let's start from a basic understanding of what do we need from for an application point of view. So in case, if you want to run an application, a Java application or a Python application, or .NET or something, that if you want to run something in your, or if you want to expose those applications to the end users, so you need a server, right? So basically you need some applications primarily used for storing data. Yes, right. So you need a server and you need some storage and basically a database. Probably if it's a three-tier architecture, you would need a database. So previously, like if you see in decades, a few years back, or at least if you talk about decades back, we were more towards the on-prem technologies, like on-prem use cases, which means the data center which we own, we manage it by ourselves and we take care of it. So it's like a self-managed server, self-managed storage and stuff, right? So that's when these big competitors, like big companies, came into picture with a term called public cloud. you know in short, the cloud computing, what they provide us, they give us services on rented basis. So you can rent the service, whatever the SKU or the spec of the server that you look for, you can rent that from AWS or Azure. I'll explain you like what are those AWS and Azure meaning. So you can rent from them and you would be charged for the monthly basis. So let's say you're going to use 10 core CPU and 20 gigs of RAM in a month. So you're going to be charged for that. You would be charged for what could be the monthly charges. You would be charged for every month. You would be charged for it. So in short, cloud computing means it gives you the availability, it gives you the elasticity, right? And it also helps you to go production within a short span of time. So you can rent those services virtually, you can access them virtually, and you can deploy the applications over those servers. And it helps us to maintain the high availability and elasticity over the point of time, right? So that's what basically the cloud computing is. And why do we go for cloud computing and not on-prem? Any one good example or the advantages, like you guys would like to put it on chat? Like why should we go for a public cloud or managed data centers instead of on-prem data centers? OPEX and APEX, okay. Pay as you go model, cost, availability, yes, right? So just I'll put one example on this. Imagine if you want to take care of your own infrastructure, like currently you don't have anything, like you just have a land, you purchased the land, right? So that's your data center. Imagine the cost, the investment or the initial investment that you will have to put to build that data center by yourself. So you just need one virtual machine, one server. To build it, you would need, like, you have to put a huge amount of investment, the initial amount to build that server, build that data center from the scratch, right? But imagine the same on the cloud provider. So it gives you the ease of access, yes, and elasticity. You can ask for any size of missions. So probably, like, think about any one probably Amazon only, e-commerce platform, right? Um, can you guys see a growth in Amazon usage after 2020 and 2024? Like basically, if you talk about the COVID time, from 2020 to 2024, do you guys see the usage of online shopping, the e-commerce platform, the post that COVID time, COVID usage, the usage, the data, amount of data being generated, the number of online shopping is increased, like everything has been increased, right? So if we have this kind of platform in a cloud, if we deploy this platform in a cloud, we don't have to worry about any of downtime. You can easily scale in and scale out. You can do horizontal scaling, you can do vertical scaling as much as you want on cloud providers. But if you have to do the same in on-prem, we will always have to make sure that the infrastructure exists. You have to maintain that infrastructure. So whenever the scaling is required, you will have to go for that service. But in cloud, it's available for you. You would just use it for a while. Whenever you want to scale, you would use it for a while. and you pay the pay as you go model. Like you can pay the rent for it, monthly rents for it. So that's the whole advantage or the whole idea of difference between an on-prem or the cloud computing usage. And I put a difference here, like what is an on-prem and what is a cloud computing usage, right? So, and this is one another thing that I like. You can put it in a very layman term, a rapid implementation, right? So, if we talk about an example, yeah, I'm coming to that example. So, if you talk about an example on cloud computing, right, like any kind of platform you take right now, um, have you guys heard of this gaming application Pokemon Go? Have you guys used it or any also this Angry Bird or like Pokemon Go would be a good example. Probably you might have heard of. They started with cloud computing. Like they started in a scratch. I think it was used in it was found in 5 6 years back, if I'm not wrong, and still like they are being running. And so let me just talk about quick thing about that application, right? Pokemon Go, what happened in the past. So they started with cloud computing and they hosted it on GCP, the Google Cloud platform, which is managed by Google, right? So what happened with their application is they expected a kind of load, and when they deployed to production, it came out to be like 16x times of load they had to handle. 16 times more than the load they have to handle, and they were able to handle it. So that's because that's because of deploying it in an elastic kind of environment. That's a cloud. And you guys would have heard of Uber as well. Uber and Netflix. So these platforms are hosted on AWS. And of course, Hotstar or OTT platforms you might have heard of, right? So during these football matches or cricket matches that happens, you guys can see the number of viewers on those platforms, which drastically increase. And if there is like any penalty kick or any like super over is going to happen, you can imagine like the number of users would be interested in watching those games, right? So drastically there would be a spike in the traffic. Yes, you can see a spike whenever there is an event or an important thing going on in a match. You can see the drastic spike in the platform. So this Hotstar, the Prime Video, also the kind of applications that we have, right? So it's hosted on Google Cloud or AWS or Azure. So that helps us to scale as much as we want. And till now, these platforms were able to achieve that elasticity just because they use a cloud computing platform, right? And Uber was able to, Uber has case studies that they hosted on AWS. So they had a success story. After moving to AWS, what kind of revenue they were able to generate. During these rainy times, whenever it has a strong weather or rough weather there is and it rains, so people try to go for taxi and Uber kind of use cases. And Uber has experienced a high volume traffic in those scenarios, and Uber was able to handle those scenarios as well with because of hosted it on AWS platform, right? And this is one example you can think of in AWS. And if you talk about Azure Cloud, you guys might have heard of Boeing platform, Boeing Aviation Service. So Boeing completely migrated to AWS, and post the migration of to AWS, they have not had any zero downtime. So this happened like 5 years back. 5 years plus they have migrated to Azure. Until then, they did not have any downtime, zero downtime they had for their application, for their aviation service. So we can just keep going on with the examples and the success stories of those platforms. So we were able to achieve all these things just because the cloud computing. That's because we have a public cloud or a cloud provider and we utilize those resources, right? And yeah, you can, it's just like the number that how it has impacted the market, like the cloud. And and of course, you guys might have known by already. Moving to cloud, it would automatically help you to increase your pump your revenue because your application is always available, and you also do a cost saving, right? So you can auto scale whenever you want. You can scale out and scale down whenever you want, right? So it helps you to generate your revenue and also do a cost saving as well, right? So this is the whole overview of cloud computing. So when we say cloud computing, everything includes in this. compute servers, virtual machines, database storage, file system servers, and also the managed servers. Like, there are some managed servers like Kubernetes, Docker, uh, Kafka servers. Have you guys heard of these Kubernetes Docker services before? Like, have you used it anywhere? We came across, right? So basically, these are all services like managed service or advanced service that being put into the cloud as well. So it helps us instead of we managing it or we set it up from the scratch, right? Instead of we setting it up from the scratch, cloud providers give it as a managed service, so that we would again save time and also the investment on those services, the initial investment on those setup services, right? So that's the major advantage of going it. And here you have those benefits of cloud computing that we were talking about till now. The speed, the agility that you can achieve when you go to cloud, and cost, definitely it will help you to save cost, right? There are some tricks that you can use on cloud, some benefits that you get on cloud. Like, let's say you promise to cloud or AWS or any cloud provider, say that you would be using their services for 3+ years, or you say that I would be using it for 200 plus hours, right? So they are ready to give some discounts on those services. Basically, when you are trying to reserve the service, you would get like 60% discount, 50% discount on services, right? So all these things comes into the AWS understanding the cloud computing topics, and each cloud providers have their own kind of revenue, the cost benefits on it, right? But in short, you would definitely save initial. Someone mentioned about COPAX and APAX, right? So that's the maintenance cost and the initial cost. So you would be able to save that on cloud computing, right? And it's of course supports the scalability and easy to access. Like, you can access it over the internet anywhere. So now I have like 100 plus servers. I can access it anywhere, provided that I have a certain configuration set. Like, I open certain firewalls, certain networks for those applications. I can access it anywhere. So so there was some kind of survey done on cloud, like how fast they were able to go production. So some kind of surveys being conducted by AWS and Azure, and there been a survey mentioned that within 5 minutes they were able to deploy an application and go production. So customers said that minimum in 5 minutes they were able to go production from zero to a production system. So this all can be achieved because of a cloud. So when you know that you have a huge infrastructure backed up, you have the high scalability system available, so you can go for any kind of extent when deploying to production. You can think of in a broader picture, you can think of your application, right? So that's how these startup companies or many organizations, they come up with ideas building up on cloud platform. The major AIs that they build. So uh, I'm not talking about the chat GPTs, but and the cloud AIs. Right? I'm thinking about the applications built on top of AIs, right? Voice AI, Bolo AI. Like, there are many kind of applications built on AI. So they are built on cloud providers. They don't have their own data centers. They build on top of cloud providers because they need to train their data sets, right? They need to make sure that their applications are available. So that's the major reason they go for the cloud providers. And so these are the major cloud providers that's being ruling the market right now: Azure, AWS, Google Cloud, and then comes the mini clouds like IBM, Bluemix, DigitalOcean, VM Cloud. Right? So these are the major cloud providers, but I would say Google Cloud, AWS, and Azure. So these three are the major cloud providers in the market right now. Major market share are being held by AWS. AWS holds 40% plus market share in the cloud. And then comes Azure, and then comes the Google Cloud, right? So that's why the cloud computing is like the it's like the hot topic right now in the market, and everyone is trying to go for cloud, even from a business point of view or from a developer point of view. Everyone wants to learn cloud because the business wants to be developed on cloud, right? Think And there are like different architectures that we would talk about cloud, right? Probably I will share this PPT. You can have a look at this. We may not go deep into the architecture of what is cloud architecture and how is built. Those things we will learn through the AWS upcoming topics, like in the AWS certification topic. So what I'll do, I'll quickly jump on to AWS, like what AWS offers from a cloud computing point of view, right? So as I said, there are major cloud providers available like AWS, GCP, and Microsoft Azure. So there should be some features difference between them, right? Like let's say I'm a startup, I want to bring up my application. So I should choose one of these clouds. As I said, these three are the major clouds. So when should I go for GCP? When should I go for Azure? And when to go for AWS? Because end of the day, all our clouds all provide the same services, right? They provide same virtual machine, same storage, same database. So why would someone go for AWS, or why would someone go for Azure or Google Cloud use case? Let's quickly discuss about it, and then I'll give you an overview of what is AWS as well, right? So probably if my use cases, if I have a startup, my use case is more towards, using the latest technologies, latest services that's being put on the market, then I would go for AWS. So AWS is the only cloud right now in the market which provides the latest tech stacks or latest hardware available in the market, right? For example, AWS is the only platform that gives Mac OS as a virtual machine. You guys know the Mac OS laptop, right? Mac laptop, MacBook. So MacBook can only be as a hardware, only can be a server, right? But AWS is the only platform that gives Mac as a virtual machine, right? And they reinvent something latest always. They come up with new ideas, they reinvent something, and they always use the latest technologies and latest hardware in their stuff. So currently, like the DDR5 memory, they are using it right now. So the latest AMD Ryzen 7, Ryzen 9, I think, Ryzen 9 chip. So they are using it. So no other cloud providers have adapted it yet, but AWS is on the latest track. So when my use cases, I should always be on the latest track. People would prefer to go for AWS, right? The second one, if I talk about Azure, so when should I go for Azure, right? When I want my application to be highly available across the globe, like Azure has the lot more data centers available compared to Google Cloud and AWS. So these guys, Microsoft also has data centers under the ocean. If you just go to Google and type Microsoft data center in Pacific Ocean, you will see they have their data centers even under the ocean. And Microsoft is the only cloud that has data centers in the ocean. And this cloud has data centers across multiple regions, multiple locations as well. Compared to GCP and cloud, AWS, these guys have more data centers. So obviously, when you go for Azure, it means you are preferring for a high availability or high use case of a high availability of your application, right? And Google Cloud, and if you are as a gaming application, right, then most of the gaming platforms, if you go and search any gaming platform, so you can see 90% of them would be hosted on GCP, the Google Cloud. The reason because the network they provide, the kind of network capability they provide, no other cloud provides right now. That example, the 100 gigs per second cable provided by GCP, let's say if it costs you $100, the same network speed, if Azure or AWS has to provide, they would provide it in more like 2x or 3x times of that price, right? And right, gaming application needs the network. The latency should be very minimal. And that's why all the gaming applications, they prefer to go for Google Cloud, right? So there's a major difference between AWS, GCP, and Azure, right? And you can pick one cloud, and I would always suggest AWS as a starting point, right? You should at least know three clouds. That's what the market demands right now. My personal suggestion is you should learn across multiple clouds. At least 2 to 3 clouds you should be knowing, and AWS would be a starting point for learning any cloud because of its easy architecture, easy console, UI look. So it would help anyone to easily onboard from zero knowledge or from on-prem knowledge to the cloud premises, right? So let me just quickly give you an overview of AWS services that are available Um, yeah, cool. I think you can see my screen of Drona. Yeah, cool. So these are the major services that, let me just zoom a little bit, right? So there are different categories the cloud providers provide. Example, the compute service, database service, storage service, networking service, right? And monitoring service. And in case if someone, someone would be in a security background, they would be more in terms of doing automations, right? So they do have services for automations and a security platform as well, right? So these are the major services that's being hosted on AWS. So AWS has 300 plus services. Okay, so they come up with new services every time they come up with new service. Yeah, I think my display, guys, you can see my screen, right? The diagram screen, everyone. Yeah, thank you. Cool. So let me just quickly walk you through this part, right? So from an AWS point of view, you have to first choose your stream, what kind of certification or what kind of a path you're going to choose, right? So if you are a developer, so there are some certifications that you would choose for as a developer. If you are more in terms of an architect, there are a set of certifications or a set of services that you would go for uh, certifications from an AWS point of view. And if you are an AI user, like data scientist or you are machine learning kind of user, there are some certifications related to it. Okay, but the major thing that you will have to learn is how to use this cloud, right? So these are the major services anyone should know, like irrespective of whether you are a developer or an architect or ML engineer or data scientist. So these are the major services that anyone should know. So when you go for compute servers are nothing but the servers, the actual servers, the physical servers, sorry, the virtual servers that you get, right? So that's where you deploy your applications. What is load balancer? Anyone? What is load balancer? Yeah, right. So load balancer is something that would help you to distribute the load across the multiple virtual machines, right? You will have whenever you scale your applications, you would need some kind of service that distributes the load across multiple machines, right? So that's the load balancer. And you have different types of databases on AWS. You have relational database. So Elastic Beanstalk, we'll talk about it. It is something like a platform as a service where you don't have to worry about managing any infrastructure. So you just give an kind of instruction to AWS that what kind of platform you want, whether you want a Linux platform or a Docker environment or Node platform. So it gives you the complete platform where you can go and deploy your application, right? So, and you have database service and the storage service, right? And this AMI is nothing but the operating system, right? So you have in your laptop, we install operating system of Linux, Windows operating system. So in AWS terminology, we call them as AMI, right? So I'm just giving you an overview. So these are the services that you would majorly need to know from an AWS point of view. And anyone who's enrolling for the certification of an architect or associate, they would be going through all these services on AWS, right? So yeah, hopefully let me just take a pass here and ask you guys any questions from anyone from an AWS or cloud computing point of view. Cool. Thanks. Then is it necessary to know Python or any programming language before working with cloud? For example, if I want to develop a deep learning application that predicts this is. Yeah, so that's a good question. From as I said, there are different streams in cloud, AWS or Azure or GCP, anywhere that you pick for, right? So there are different streams that you would go for. So if you are more interested in cloud developer role or an architect role, then programming language is not a necessary stuff. But in case if the use case that you ask for, or deep learning use case or an data analyst use case, so you should know how to work with, right? Like you should know how to write a Jupyter notebook. You should know how to run those code. So cloud is nothing but it just gives you a platform. It just gives you the environment to run those platforms, right? So it's not something it's gonna bring in any new programming language, or it's going to bring some new use case for us to run something. So if you know like how to run a, I would say the cloud is learning cloud does not demand any programming language, but the application that you deploy, like as you said, the chest x-ray scanner, the predicting the disease, so that would be what demanding the language. So there you would need a Python language or an R language where you run those predicting services. What is the role of a cloud architect? So, on a bigger picture, cloud architect is someone who does the technical diagram, who does the high level design of a diagram. So, coming back to this diagram, like there are lot many services available. Like here, if you see on a high level. So, if you go for monitoring, you have some list of service. From cloud computing service, you have some list of services here, right? So considering this, a cloud architect is someone who does the high level design for the project. Example, if I say I want to build a gaming application or an e-commerce application, so what kind of servers should I choose for? Whether I need a two-core CPU, whether I need a load balancer or not, what kind of database I need, right? And what kind of availability I would need for my application, whether it's a 99% availability or should I need a disaster recovery region. So all these, the high-level architecturing thing comes under the radar of one cloud architect, right? So he may not be coding anything, but he would be the one who designs the project, the complete architecture of the project. Okay, and a developer is someone who is going to implement it. So cloud architect gives the high-level design, and a developer would be implementing it as a code, and a developer is expected to know the coding language. Okay, a person who need to learn cloud computing regarding which knowledge of DSIMI and ML non-premises skills, which service or tools to learn out of these 200 plus services. Okay, so when we focus on AI and ML services on cloud, right? So again, we cannot specifically say that you have to learn these services. So first, you will have to know how to work with the compute service. Like you should know what is an EC2 instance, what is a load balancer, right? And then you should know what is a database service, because just think from an application point of view, right? You have an application, you have an LLM, you have an ML application or something. So you generate something and you need a server for it, and you need a database to store that application. So these three are the major resources: the compute, database, storage, and monitoring. We cannot skip these services irrespective of what kind of role you go for, whether an architect or an associate or ML engineer, we cannot skip these services. So on top of this, AWS has some managed services as well, like SageMaker. Um, there are some automated ML processors. So you can study on those services as well. But on a high level, you should know the basics of cloud, like compute service, database service, monitoring, storage, and then you will go for those ML related services. What is a disaster recovery region? So disaster recovery region is nothing but you have your primary region, right? Like you deploy your whole infrastructure in the primary region. And what if your primary region goes down with some natural calamities, or some kind of issue happened in your application? It went down, right? So complete region itself is down. Then your application would experience a downtime. Like you will not be able to serve the traffic that comes in that particular time. So what we do, we set up a complete exact setup in another region, the complete exact, the clone of that in the other region, right? So whenever there is a issue with my primary region, we automatically fail over the traffic to a secondary region. And that secondary region is called disaster recovery region. Okay. What role does AWS play hosting in just X-ray application? What benefits and functionalities does AWS provide? So AWS provides you a, let's say you don't have to go and train a model from the scratch. AWS has a pre-built model. If you go to AWS SageMaker, so that's one of the ML model I said, like ML training model, you would have a pre-trained model in the SageMaker. So you can use that model and then you can tune it as much as you want. So that's the kind of benefit or the services that AWS provide. And of course, the compute service and the storage service they provide as well. Okay. Can you put a link or a chart? Sure, I'll share this one. I'll add some descriptions over it and I'll share it with Snega as well, and you'll be able to access it. As a data analyst or scientist, what cloud computing will provide. So, as I said, I just spoke about it now, right? So, from a data scientist or an analyst perspective, you need some kind of, I think from a data scientist, you might have heard of these services, Spark cluster, um, Flink cluster, monitoring, right? So, these things you would have. So, AWS provides those managed cluster. So you don't have to spin up those clusters from the scratch. You get those clusters, which is pre-built, pre-defined on the AWS platform. So you just need to click and then the cluster is ready. Then you can start processing your data, ingesting your data to those services. So that's the kind of service that what AWS provides for analyst or an data scientist use case. The big data platform is available on AWS. Okay. Email this. Yeah, I'll share it with Snega and she'll be able to help you with the PPT where you can download and access it. Okay. Snega, any other questions, anything else to discuss? Over to you.
Bharat, do you want to move ahead with the different slides or you want to continue with the
No,
questions?
I think we just done with part we have discussed over it. Use cases now.
Anything else left? Nothing, right?
Yeah, that's good.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Bharat. Thank you so much for all this insights. And after this, there were so many people who told me cloud was complicated in the chat. So I quickly wanted to know now, do you feel the same? A quick yes or no for the people who told me that cloud is complicated. Thank you, Mohit. No? Okay. Bivin still feels cloud is complicated. Okay. Great, great. Yes, Mamado. You told me that cloud was complicated in the start, and now you're saying me no. So thanks a lot, Bharat, for all this information. Where it was good to understand what cloud computing is, where you gave us this insight of pay for what you use, where you scale up, pay more, where you scale less and pay less, and the flexibility and the scalability of cloud. That was very good. And to also know that 40% of the stock of cloud is owned by AWS. And every day there are close to 300 new servers which AWS have. That's something very useful. And even frankly speaking, even I thought cloud was complicated and cloud is tough to understand for a person from a sales background. But after this masterclass, I think uh, I would also definitely want to register and upskill myself. Yes, that is something which is good.